This podcast is not intended to provide any investment advice. The opinions expressed here by either the hosts or guests do not necessarily reflect the views of PSA, Collectors Holdings, or any of their affiliates. Any discussion of collectible values in the past or present is not a guarantee of future performance. Hello and welcome back to episode 27 of the PSA Pod. Ryan Greene, Steve Sloan, and Jack Archer here at HQ in the NBA Jam studio. As we said last week, we're going to be talking football again this week, predominantly. But we got to dive right in because some big news last week that is affecting the hobby and the ripple effect is still being felt a few days later on the diamond. Fernando Tatis Jr., one of the biggest names in the hobby the last couple of years. This is a big one. 80-game suspension for a positive PED test.
I think everyone's talking about the charts going up, the charts going down, mostly, obviously. Lots down. You can talk about that all day, but you guys probably want to talk about this as a collector, the emotional impact that it has, because collecting ultramodern guys isn't easy.
Yeah, I'm going through a lot of emotions right now. On one hand, I feel like I'm some type of collecting prodigy genius because I moved a handful of my Tatis cards in trades at the National. I also feel just incredibly sad as a baseball fan, as a Tatis collector, because I love watching this guy play. It has nothing to do with the charts. It has nothing to do with the value in some of the cards I own of Tatis going down. It just has to do with how much I enjoyed collecting him, how much I enjoyed watching him play, and whether this will really taint his legacy, whether this will really taint him as a player in a big way. And I'm bummed out because he was about to return, and the Padres were going to be so fun. And we don't get to see that as baseball fans.
Yeah, a lot of the same emotions here. I've been collecting him for about 2.5 years now. I'm sitting there trying to do the rational stuff in my head where I'm seeing the charts, I'm seeing the card ladder data, I'm seeing the numbers go down. I'm on eBay seeing it. I bought a lot of this stuff at a point where it doesn't hurt as much, but you mentioned from the emotions side, and when I really got back into collecting, moving away from strictly 90s, early 2000s stuff and started collecting ultra modern again, which was about 2018, 19. He was one of the players who was the reason why I started doing it. A really young, electrifying, fun to watch every night on SportsCenter, fun to follow on Instagram type of athlete who I was I can align my joy for watching him with my passion for collecting. I still have that emotional connection even after last week.
And you will when he comes back next May or June, whenever that is over.
Yeah.
And he's one of the most exciting players in baseball. He's the reason a lot of young people got into collecting baseball again, because he was so, just relatable on a certain level, being kind of a renegade. I remember him swinging on a 3-0 pitch in Texas and hitting it out, and the Rangers flipping out on him. Swing away, Tatis. That's my thing with him. He's he obviously is learning some lessons here, we hope, according to his teammates, they hope as well. But, for us as collectors, we're going to have about 20 months of him not playing ball, and a lot can happen over those 20 months. We've already seen it start to go down, but I would say from a collector's perspective, if you believe in the guy, this is a great time for reviewing what's out there in the marketplace and picking your spots.
Totally.
I also think the steroid that he was using, it wasn't like this guy was trying to I'm going to go for 80 home runs.
He wasn't trying to bulk up.
I want my head to double in size. He had some type of medical issue. And granted, baseball players in this day and age should be savvy and smart enough to be really considerate and careful with the kind of medications they're taking and all of that stuff, because the MLB pours resources to make sure that everything is good to go. Apparently, they have a 24/7 call line, which you can call to have any medication you're taking run through all of their procedures and all of that kind of stuff. But what does leave me optimistic here is that it was a stupid mistake, but it wasn't a malicious mistake. And I think some of the taint that PED positive players have had over the last 20, 25 years won't necessarily apply to Tatis, or at least maybe that's just me being optimistic, but that's kind of how I feel right now.
Hopefully there's an evolution, right? That PED connection means no Hall of Fame in most instances, and that just puts a huge ceiling on guys when they're playing their careers out. I think one exception might be Ortiz, but there's some controversy whether or not he was actually one of those guys or not. But this could be, mean an artificially low ceiling for Tatis unless we evolve as a baseball society towards realizing that there are shades of gray differences between, the big head guys and the guys. What was it, ringworm? What are we going with now?
Allegedly, that's what it was. Yeah, I'm of the opinion, and I have been this way, that if you show contrition and you kind of address what happened head on, take ownership. People, it's human nature. People want to forgive and move forward. I will say, in the wake of it, the last week, like I think he's done that. But now the actions need to show it on the other side, because it has been a rocky year between the wrist injury from the motorcycle accident. But
I guess the question is, like, how much is enough for a collector, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so
you can go around the table on who's selling here. I don't think anyone's selling.
No.
Like, it's
well,
we're in, and you mentioned the motorcycle accident. This is now another instance where it's like, okay, how much patience do you have as a collector? But I think, given the upside 23, like, you're going to hang in there with these cards. I think it just makes the most sense, I would think, unless you're like, you put your whole life savings into it, which is a different set of circumstances, maybe more reflective of you than Fernando Tatis.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is, where I'm at now as a collector is, like you mentioned, the prices are down. Like, if you are a believer and you want to get in on some more Tatis cards, there's going to be a prime opportunity for these next probably 6 or so months. I'm going to be holding what I have. I don't know that I'll necessarily be looking to add any more. There are a couple key early cards of him that I've been looking to get that maybe now are going to be actually attainable. But I want to wait and see, because, when he is projected to return from the suspension, he's going to be 24 years old, still has all the charisma in the world, still has all the talent in the world. I think he can put a couple good seasons together and potentially move past this completely, in the eyes of baseball fans. So I'm still, holding some optimism.
I tell you what, there's a Finest the Man Gold Refractor Tatis PSA 10, which it's been for sale, but at a very high buy it now price on eBay. It went to auction. It ends in a few days. I will most likely be bidding on that. I'll also be keeping an eye on for his 2019 Topps Chrome Gold Refractor in a PSA 10 case. That rarely goes for sale. It's numbered to 50. I think the last sold for just under $7,000. That's something I'll be keeping an eye on. It's a card I've wanted for a very long time, and if I can get a ridiculous price on it, I might just have to grab it. But I think for me right now, it's just kind of waiting for those like big Grail cards that I've been eyeing for a while. If those fall at a really great price, I'm going to pick them up, but I won't be like actively pursuing Tatis until we get a little more clarity on the situation, and this kind of like sinking feeling in my stomach I have about it fades a little bit.
Totally. And, to give a little bit of an indication of where things are, looking at Card Ladder, his Topps Chrome Sapphire rookie card from 2019, which is, essentially the pinnacle of base rookie cards for him. There's a population of 320 PSA 10s out there. The current Card Ladder value on that card is just under $1,100, which, if you would have told me that a year ago, I'd have thought you were crazy. And I would have wanted to know what the heck happened, because a year ago, the Card Ladder Index showed that card at just under $3,800. So, it's still holding some value, but compared to a year ago, it's taken a big fall. And like you said, Jack, if there's those grails out there that you really want to try to go after, there's going to be an opportunity.
2019 is the GOAT of Sapphire designs.
It really is. It's no matter, even with everything last week, I have a PSA 10 that I own of that card. Still one of my favorite cards in my entire collection. Last week did nothing to change that. So
you're not going to trade it to me?
No, I am not. I am not. No matter what Justin Fields cards you pull.
Redemptions,
nope.
Let's talk shop.
Not going anywhere for at least a year. So, speaking of your cards,
yes,
we had. Look, we're gonna be talking football the rest of the way, and there's no better way to get into it than talking about a fun rip that was just a whale of a rip.
It was what you live for as a collector.
Set it up here. Yeah.
All right. So at the National, I picked up a couple boxes from Steel City, and typically I'd rip them right away. But for whatever reason, I held on to this box of 2021 NFL Contenders Optic football. I don't know why. I just had some weird patience going on and decided to on Friday to rip it with the boys here in the office, have a little fun. And my goodness, I've never had a box like this before. It's not the pinnacle all-time box, but it's pretty high up there for me.
It might be there. Yeah. If this was filmed, it would be like going viral all over Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff. It was a crazy
everything.
box.
All right, yeah. So let's start with as those who collect Contenders Optic football know that there's 6 cards in a box, right? Well, this particular box had 7 cards in it, which has to be like a collation error from Panini, but is awesome to think as a collector that those are out there. Like it's like the ultimate hot box, right? But not only are the cards in it incredible, which we'll get to in a second, but there's an extra card. It's like, especially for that type of product, that's just incredible.
It looked like there were 2 redemptions that stuck to each other.
And they were sequentially numbered 104 and 105 in terms of the card numbers of those 2. So that lends to the suggestion that they did stick together. It's like, all right, high five me.
Still my favorite moment of that whole rip when you yelled out, "There's 2 redemptions." It was awesome.
So starting with those redemptions, it was a Jamar Chase was the first one. It was to 25, which is IPC Jamar. So for me, that was just an incredible high. The second one we pulled was 104 number card, which was Kyle Pitts cracked ice to 22, a redemption as well. So Kyle Pitts he had a decent rookie season. He flashed in a couple games, one against Miami for instance, but like he still has some runway, some upside, and as an athlete is incredible. So really stoked on those 2 redemptions. Got another Eli Mitchell. What was it to like?
It was a blue,
yeah, auto, which was nice. Starting running back for the Niners, but really what pushed it over the top for me were the 2 low numbered quarterback inserts. One was a winning ticket, Patrick Mahomes red and white and blue mojo to 13, which is cool. Love that card.
Really cool looking card. I've never seen that parallel in person. I thought that was just an awesome looking card.
It really pops. It has like this mojo effect to it. It's a nice looking card.
Yeah, I went on a deep dive on eBay afterwards, like looking at all the different ones. Like, I could get all the Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. That's what happens to you as a collector when you get exposed to a new card. That's really cool. But ultimately, the best card out of the box was a Tom Brady season ticket gold numbered to 10, which was just a showstopper in the moment. It's like, Brady gold. I was just like, I couldn't even fathom the fact that I'd already hit some pretty incredible cards in the box, and then that was in there as well. So
Prism gold cards are so just elusive.
Mm-hmm.
You rarely see them at shows. You rarely see them on eBay. You rarely see them in person. You almost never see them pulled. So to see a gold out of 10 and then have it be Tom Brady and the card looks so pure on top of it, it was really special to see. And it like Tom Brady gold out of 10, like there's very few things in the hobby better than that.
Yeah, it restores your faith in ripping because we've all had the lows of ripping wax, and sometimes it just doesn't go your way. That's what it is, right? But
I mean, some people love Eric Bledsoe sticker autographs.
Jack referencing one of the pulls from another box we ripped that day. But this is one of those things that keeps you coming back to the well. And for me, I think I immediately after work drove to MVP Sports Cards and had to get more. I got they were out of Contenders, but I got a box of Optic and got a Najee Harris downtown, which is pretty cool, and so a couple other good inserts from T-Law. But anyway, just a really fun way to spend a Friday afternoon. And just all of you guys listening out there, have some faith in wax every once in a while. It does deliver.
It's so fun to rip with an audience too.
Yes,
it's part of the reason I think breaking is so awesome, because everyone loves the idea of, hey, I'm ripping a box and something huge is hit and the entire chat is just going wild.
Mm-hmm. We
had that like IRL, like everybody was hovered around Steve as he opened this, and it was the craziest thing ever. I really wish the cameras were rolling. Did you share the cards on Instagram yet? You should definitely do that.
No, I'll do that.
Or Twitter or wherever.
These cards need to see the world.
Now I'm on TikTok too, so I got to do it there as well. So.
These cards need to see the world. And PSA's on TikTok too. I was dropping that in there at PSA_card.
All right.
Go check us out. I was so excited for you knowing that you're collecting Jamar Chase cards because
Yeah,
that was the
that
first
was cool.
redemption, and some of his redemptions are starting to go live. I've seen on eBay, so
You're right.
it's
Yeah.
it's not looking like a situation where you're going to be waiting like forever for that card. So I mean, I'm not going to guarantee anything, but
It's just like that's such a satisfying feeling when you PC a guy and you hit him in a box. It's like I can't describe it, and collectors out there know what I'm talking about. But it's just like you hit the winning lottery ticket when your guy pops. So it was a cool feeling, and to have that like a Kyle Pitts cracked ice stuck to the back of it, it's just like yes, sir. And yeah, it was just one of those great feelings. So thank you, Steel City out of the National. I appreciate you guys for the box.
I know you're being a little coy on Kyle Pitts, but one of the best tight end prospects of this generation.
I'm up on Kyle Pitts.
I'm fired up about that card for you.
Cracked Ice Contenders or Cracked Ice Contenders Optic, both really pinnacle hobby cards too.
Mm-hmm.
Like Contenders in football will always be super like a huge deal because of the Tom Brady rookie autograph. But the Cracked Ice in particular is so highly coveted amongst hobbyists. And Kyle Pitts, everyone's going after him in fantasy this year. He's gonna be paired Drake London. Like I'm pretty optimistic about his future. He's a freak athlete, like we mentioned earlier. And I think there's a lot of room in the hobby too for tight end love, whether it's Tony Gonzalez, Gronk, Travis Kelce, and I think Kyle Pitts is probably the next in line.
Yeah, the throne is basically there for the taking. Gronk retired. Kelsey's, got only a few years left probably. So good position for you, Steve.
Hey, I'm a huge football collector, so it made my day. So I appreciate you guys hanging with me. And that box was a great moment for us. And we have nothing to add to our Hall of Shame case. Like I don't know if the listeners are aware of our Hall of Shame case, but all of our not so desirable breaks go into it. We got our Jamarcus Russell. We got our Vinny Testaverde. Anyway, we'll stop there.
But like we said, we are going to keep talking football today, and we are super excited to be welcoming back to the show for the second time Brett Kollmann, analyst with the Film Room, whose work you will find on YouTube. Also very entertaining on follow on Twitter at Brett Kollmann, Kollmann. We've put the link to his channel and his Twitter profile in the description, so definitely check it out there and give him a follow. Always a fun conversation because one of my favorite sayings in football: men lie, women lie, the film never lies. All right, Brett, thank you for joining us once again here on the PSA Pod. Like we said, we had you on the show back a few months ago after the draft wrapped up, and the way that you see the game and the insights you can bring, I think, are really valuable, especially to card collectors as they're making decisions on guys who maybe they want to be starting to buy cards of, guys they might be looking to sell. So again, we really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we can't wait, Brett, because as a football expert, you have a lot of insight that can be applied to the hobby. But because you're not in the hobby, you're not sort of jaded by some of the hobby logic that we all know because that's all we hear. So I have a little game that I want to start off with you, where essentially we go through all the 2021 rookie quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. And I want you to rank in terms of how much you think their rookie card is worth in value from most expensive to least expensive. And then we're going to see how close you are to where the hobby prices actually land.
Sure.
So fire away. Again, the names are Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, and Zach Wilson.
Okay, so I'll kind of rank them all at once here because I'm curious. I would say Trevor Lawrence is still probably the most expensive.
That is correct.
I would say I'm going to go Mac Jones is the second most expensive. And then Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Davis Mills, in that order.
You're pretty close. You're pretty close. So I'm going to reveal the pricing just so the listeners know. This is for the Select XRC PSA 10. We chose to select XRC because it's been out the longest, so the price is the most stable. Prism, which is kind of like the kingpin of modern football sets, released just in June, I believe. So it's not as steady. So this is select XRC pricing. Trevor Lawrence was number one. It sells for $1,125.
Okay.
In a PSA 10.
In a PSA 10.
PSA 10.
Okay.
Trey Lance sells for $1,000. He's number two. Mac Jones, number three, at $800. Number four is Zach Wilson at $700. And five is my co-host's favorite football player of all time at this point, Justin Fields, at $659.
I'm actually surprised that Trey Lance is right up there with Trevor Lawrence. I did not expect that.
So it's funny because we talk about hobby logic, and hobbyists, I think, try to project things a little bit. One of the things we've talked about on this show before with Trey Lance is how many collectors out there are kind of looking at it like a Mahomes type situation where he sat on the bench for year one, steps into a really good roster, year two as the starter. People kind of projecting it, maybe, him to be set up for success in a similar way. And I think what you see is some of that gets baked into the prices that cards go for on the secondary market.
And I think they're also probably just hoping that he becomes another Josh Allen, which is a quarterback who had notable accuracy issues in college and then somehow broke all former precedent that we've ever seen in the history of the league and became pinpoint accurate and an elite quarterback in like 3 years. That's what people are hoping for here. But I can tell you this much. I was down at 49ers training camp last week, and the accuracy issues with Trey Lance are still there. They're absolutely still there. There will be growing pains. I would not be totally surprised if the price goes down a little bit about halfway during the season, and maybe I would feel a little bit more comfortable buying in at that point because, there's no bones about it. Like Brock Purdy outperformed him in red zone period when I was there at practice this week. Now in like the no huddle and the move the ball period where there was more space to work with and they could kind of scheme things up. Yeah, Trey Lance was better there, but there were still a lot of batted balls. There were still a lot of balls thrown behind receivers over the middle. I think he went like 1 for 5 down the boundary to IU. Like there was still a lot of inconsistency there. So I'm a little bit reticent to buy in as the second most expensive second-year quarterback. I would almost like what's Davis Mills' value? I'm curious.
So Davis Mills actually doesn't have a select XRC because this was only for the first handful of quarterbacks drafted.
Five per position. Yeah.
5 per position.
And what's Justin Fields?
659. He's last out of the first 5 quarterbacks taken.
Yeah, give me Justin Fields at 659 over Trey Lance at 1,000. That's where I'm at with it.
I have both arms in the air. I just want to give you that visual. I love hearing you say that. That's well, I guess let's get your true ranking on this. So in terms of, you mentioned being at Niners camp last week, from what you're seeing on the film, from what you've seen in person a little bit, from what you've heard from sources, let's talk about those first 5 first. Because we do want to drop Davis Mills in there a little bit too. But starting with the 5 first-round quarterbacks from the 2021 class, what's kind of your true ranking in terms of projections of their on-field performance and how bullish you are on them in the 2022 season?
In the 2022 season, I would say in terms of like who's just going to be the best player on the field, I would probably say Trevor Lawrence. And then, Matt Patricia gives me a little bit of pause about Mac Jones, not going to lie. But in terms of just good quarterback right now, sure, let's go Mac Jones at number 2, then Justin Fields, then Trey Lance. And then I'm still kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with Zach Wilson because he's getting his knee surgery as of the day of us recording this. And it could just be a meniscus trim, but if it's a full repair, he's going to be out for the year. So I'm kind of waiting to see on Zach Wilson for now until we know exactly what's going on with his knee. But if he was healthy, if Zach Wilson was healthy, I'd probably put him at number 2.
Interesting.
All right, so I'm going to go over a handful of the other young, very collectible quarterbacks in the NFL. Same thing. So select XRC PSA 10 pricing, and I want your reaction to it. So coming in less than any of the 2021 quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts sells for $587, and below that is Kyler Murray for $570. We've seen Kyler's prices go up and down tremendously since he entered the league. Above Trevor Lawrence is Lamar Jackson at just under $1,400, then Joe Burrow at $1,550, then Josh Allen at just over $1,600. Herbert is number 2 at around $2,000, and number 1 is Patrick Mahomes at $4,300, more than double the number 2, Justin Herbert.
That is really surprising to me that Lamar is all the way down at 1,400 compared to Herbert at 2,000. That one doesn't quite sit right with me. I think there's a lot of projection in what we think Herbert's going to be. And I totally understand that. But at the same time, like, Lamar was a top 3 frontrunner for MVP last year before he got hurt. And so to see him barely above, well, relatively speaking, barely above, last year's rookie class, despite being a bona fide MVP contender every single year, seems like he's very underpriced there. And I think there's still kind of a weird, totally inaccurate narrative that, like, Lamar is just a running quarterback and he's not a natural thrower. Like, no, you don't win unanimous MVP and lead the league in touchdown passes and win 80% of your games if you're not a good passing quarterback. He's a great thrower and he's a great player. And him at 1,400 sticks out to me the most out of all those. That seems like a wild value. Especially for what I think he's going to do this year as well. I would say, let's see, what was Jalen Hurts was like 5 something,
just
right?
Under $600, yeah.
Yeah, under Justin Fields, under Zach Wilson.
Yeah, that one seems underpriced to me as well. I think that this is the best situation that Jalen Hurts has ever had. And keep in mind, I've been watching him since he was 18 years old at Alabama. He's gotten better every single year for essentially 7 straight years. I think that considering the weapons he has, the offensive line he has, the continuity on the coaching staff, I think this is going to be very much a breakout year for Jalen Hurts. And if you're going to get him, $557 is probably the best price point you're going to get at this point.
Well, you brought him up earlier because, while we're talking young quarterbacks and before we move on a little bit, you mentioned Davis Mills. He's kind of the name that's lurking in this 2021 rookie QB class because he was outside of the first round. But, if you look at the numbers, he performed really well when he got his opportunity last year. What do you make of him, just as kind of a little bit of an under the radar guy where there's not a lot of pressure on him, not a lot of pressure on the team to perform this year, or at least not a lot of expectation? What's kind of your stance there?
It's funny because going back to his time at Stanford, like, he was a 5-star kid. People forget that he was a very highly recruited prospect. He could have gone to pretty much any program in the country. His calling card at Stanford, if we can call it that, was inconsistency. He would look like a superhero on one drive and then throw an unbelievably dumb interception the next. He was basically the college version of Kirk Cousins. And so I didn't really know how to value him because I never knew what I was going to get. And then he goes to Houston, and all of a sudden the good shows up a lot more than the bad. And I think Pep Hamilton, who has a history of developing young quarterbacks, with Andrew Luck and with, Justin Herbert in his rookie year. Like, Pep Hamilton is kind of known as like a young quarterback whisperer. And I think that he's done a phenomenal job kind of unlocking Davis Mills, and 5-star talent, highly recruited kid. And he outperformed most of the other, rookie quarterbacks in his class. In fact, pretty much all of them other than Mac Jones last year. So I think that he is only poised to get better. He's got great arm talent, way underrated arm talent. The weapons around him are better than you think. Nico Collins is probably going to have a big year too. He's still got the ageless Brandon Cooks. There's a young running back that they have right now, which I don't even know if cards exist for Dameon Pierce, but good Lord, if you're listening to this and you take anything out of this show, go get a Dameon Pierce card. Best condition you can possibly find. He's going to be the lead back in Houston this year and be wildly productive. So I think that there's a lot more talent in Houston than people think, and Davis Mills is a better quarterback than people think. And I think that the public perception of what the Texans are will work in people's favor if they're trying to find, some of these cheaper cards that could end up being pretty valuable.
You heard it here first, people.
Yeah.
Mills pays the bills. Our boss, Steve, is actually loading up on Davis Mills cards, and he's going to be incredibly happy to hear exactly what you just said.
I don't do Dameon Pierce cards even exist? Do you guys know of any?
If they do, nothing in his pro uniform yet, but it is interesting to hear you talk about him because I've heard him brought up on some of the, the fantasy shows so far. It seems to be a very, very trendy name that's kind of coming up the ranks.
Nico Collins too. I keep hearing that name. I mean, there's a lot of good wide receivers in this rookie class, but I keep hearing Nico Collins.
Yeah, he was a very talented kid out of Michigan. He had an opt-out year during COVID. Highly recruited, 40-inch vert, legit deep speed, great ball skills. Showed up to the Senior Bowl a couple years ago and just blew everybody away. And then he was there. I think he was the second-round pick for them. But if he played, throughout college and didn't have the opt-out year and was productive and all that on a very good Michigan team, he probably could have pushed to be a first-round pick. And again, going to Houston where there wasn't a whole lot of competition on the roster at the time for the number 2 job behind Brandon Cooks, and you have a young quarterback on the rise, Davis Mills, that has no qualms about giving him chances deep down the field. I think that we could see Nico Collins, maybe somewhere between 850 to 1,100 yards and between 6 and 9 touchdowns this year, which for a young wide receiver that I don't know what his card value is right now, but it's probably extremely low. I think that he is a receiver on the upswing that within a couple of years, when he eventually takes over the number 1 job, could be a phenomenal long play for you.
Well, so those are some good names to know in terms of the skill position guys. We're going to get a little bit more into that too as we go. One more thing on the quarterback side, we want to talk about these guys outside of the 2021 class. Joe Burrow last year kind of took the hobby by storm while he took the NFL by storm, especially in that January, February postseason run. Does he have a repeat performance in him this year? And is there kind of another level that he hasn't hit yet, especially with some of these improvements they have around him? Or is what we saw last year the best that we're going to see? What's kind of your make on Joe Burrow with what you're seeing?
He 100% has a repeat performance in him because that was already a repeat performance of 2019 when he was at LSU. He's always been that guy, at least going back to, again, 2019 LSU. And 2020 as a rookie where they had some weapons, but they still didn't have, a Jamar Chase on the roster, and T. Higgins was a rookie, and the offensive line was even worse than it was last year. And so he went from an offense that, I'm not even kidding, was more talented at LSU than what he had in Cincy. Kind of had a downgrade in talent going from college to the NFL. He didn't struggle as a rookie. He actually showed a lot of great stuff as a rookie, but then he got hurt, and then he had to come back in 2021. He got his guy Jamar, and all of a sudden, again, it looked exactly like 2019 LSU again. And now, for the first time since that 2019 season, he has better talent around him with the Bengals overall than what he had in college because they spent significant amount of money on the offensive line and giving him better interior offensive line protection. So I think that he's still that guy. He's still a cyborg. I've seen it 2 out of the last 3 years now that he is one of the best quarterbacks on planet Earth. I have no reason to believe that's going to stop. And now that he's not going to be running for his life on every 3rd and long, I think that we could be in store for, not just another elite season, but potentially the most productive season in the entire league.
That has me really excited. I love watching Joe Burrow and the Bengals play. The charisma and the confidence that he brings out. It's very collectible. I actually don't own any Joe Burrow cards right now, and I'm feeling like that's going to be a mistake, especially after hearing what you just said, Brett.
And they're only 1,500, right?
For that particular
one, yeah. So that's under Justin Herbert, under Josh Allen, under Patrick Mahomes considerably. You could pretty much own 3 Joe Burrow rookie cards for the price of 1 Patrick Mahomes rookie card.
That's a much better investment.
All right, so outside of Burrow, what quarterback do you think can make that kind of historic run deep into the playoffs next year and really kind of take the hobby by storm, take football fans by storm like Burrow did last year?
That's a really interesting question because it might not even be a young quarterback. I do think that Derek Carr has been perpetually underrated for a long time now. And I think that there's a lot of talent on that offense around him. Having Devontae Adams come over is huge. They're best friends. They had great chemistry in college. I have no reason to doubt that chemistry is not going to pick up right where it left off when they were at Fresno State. The offensive line, we're still trying to figure out exactly what's going on with Brandon Parker and whether or not he's going to be available to start for them because Alex Leatherwood at right tackle is an issue. But in terms of everything else around Derek Carr, he has an elite supporting cast, elite weaponry, a great offensive mind at head coach Josh McDaniels. And I think that Derek Carr, the reputation works against him, I think, in terms of narrative, but in terms of investment, it works in favor of people right now because when they see Derek Carr, they think of, average NFL quarterback. But it's like, no, he's really more like a top 10 NFL quarterback that now has the best complement of weapons in his entire career. And even though the AFC and the AFC West in particular is stacked, I think that they could go on a real run here. And I think that Derek Carr, anything under like, 1,400 for Derek Carr is, in my opinion, a pretty good value.
I can assure you there are very much under $1,400. The hobby has little interest in Derek Carr. It bumped up a little bit when they brought in Devontae Adams, but our boss, to bring him up against Steve, is also a massive Raiders fan and massive Derek Carr collector. So between this and Davis Mills, he might be like buying like a super yacht or something by the end of the season.
Well, what is Carr at right now? I'm curious.
I'll bring it up right now if you want to give me a second. It's not 1-to-1 because he doesn't have a select XRC, but I can.
And he was also in the 2014 class, which in the hobby was a little bit of a different time too, because right now all these cards, the Panini products are the only rookie cards that exist of a lot of these guys. And Derek Carr's rookie year was in that kind of crossover period where you had both Panini and Topps making products. So it was kind of a matter of preference for collectors. It split people a little bit. So there's not really those like clear cut must haves.
You're gonna to mention 2014. I bet most people were buying Johnny Manziel back then, not Derek
Carr.
Exactly
that too.
You're gonna lose your mind hearing how much a 2014 Topps Chrome Derek Carr refractor cost. It's Pop 362, so it's not quite as rare as the select XRCs we mentioned earlier. He's also wearing a red practice jersey, which collectors don't necessarily like as much as like the true NFL kit, but it sells for just $275.
Shut up! Really?
Really?
What?
So you've heard it here. The reaction kind of says it all. Especially with
is it just because of the practice jersey? Is that the only reason?
That might have something to it. Like I said, it's not exactly 1-to-1 to the select XRCs in terms of pricing, but it's probably the closest thing that we have. There are a few little details like the practice jersey, the population there. It's not quite as rare as these XRCs in most circumstances, but yeah. So maybe it's closer to like where like Jalen Hurts is, like around the 500 range if we were to go completely 1-to-1. But yeah, his Topps Chrome refractor, Pop 362 in a PSA 10. $275 last sold according to cardladder.com.
Wow, I would jump on that like right now.
I might be doing that as soon as we're done recording this. we do want to ask you, we talk about breakout quarterbacks and guys who could really take off in the hobby, but kind of getting back into the skill position just a little bit. We'll kind of run down here, but let's start on the perimeter ish. A wide receiver or tight end or two, who you think is poised to really pop this year and why? Like who's really catching your attention?
If I'm looking at rookies, George Pickens and Sky Moore are probably the two rookie receivers that I'm looking at first, with maybe like a little side dish of Jalen Tolbert, the Cowboys premium there. Yeah. But George Pickens is he was one of my tier 1 receivers in this draft class in terms of pre-draft grade. He ended up going in the second round. I assume because of the injury issues he dealt with in college. He had an ACL that eliminated pretty much every game but 2 in his last year in college. But he was an absolutely insane talent. Showed up at Steelers camp, has been, by a lot of accounts, their best receiver, even over Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, which is not super surprising to me. I figured we'd get there eventually. I didn't think we'd get there in 3 weeks, but the George Pickens hype is absolutely real. And if you can find a PSA 10 rookie of George Pickens right now, that's probably one of the things I would zero in on before anything else we've talked about today.
The Steelers can develop wide receivers like nobody's business. And what's great about Pickens is that he has that incredible confidence that all the great wide receivers have. Like he's very like flashy and all that good stuff already. And that feels to translate super well as like a number 1 wide receiver type.
And keep in mind, my mock draft this year, I had him as the 14th overall pick. I was extremely high on him. And so I was already kind of at a default, like, yeah, I would target George Pickens, but especially after seeing all the camp hype, I would have to go get him.
Yeah, he had that nice touchdown catch too. Just drag the toe.
Yeah,
it was really well done. I'm hyped for him. I will definitely be looking at him in fantasy drafts this year. And if I rip a football card box and get a George Pickens rookie card, I'm definitely holding on to that one. I have a quick question for you, Brett. So quarterbacks are obviously the most collectible in terms of football cards in the hobby, but there are wide receivers that make that jump to the same tier as quarterbacks for the collecting community. Jerry Rice, obviously, Randy Moss, obviously, Larry Fitzgerald is insanely collectible. Calvin Johnson, to a certain extent, insanely collectible. Is there any wide receiver that you think is going to, you sort of project his career to potentially have that kind of level of staying power and collectability? Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase is really hot right now. Is there any wide receiver that you think could turn into one of those like generational wide receivers that people really want to collect and hold on to long term?
The 2 or maybe 2.5 that jump out to me the most are Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson. Jamar Chase is the obvious one, but I think low key, especially if Buffalo does what I think they're going to do over the next few years, Stephon Diggs, I think that has an outside shot of being, one of those guys as well. He's been one of the 5 best receivers in the league for a few years now. And I think that once he gets the ring and the exposure that comes from being on this era of Buffalo Bills, which could be the best team in the league right now, I do think that Stephon Diggs has a chance to elevate to that status. Devontae's already there. Justin Jefferson is a couple years away from being there. But I would say that those 3 in particular, and then of course Jamar Chase, but they'll have to do it for a few more years. Those 3 are really the ones that I think could end up being, a receiver that we talk about 20 years from now.
That's really exciting to hear.
Yeah.
It feels like with wide receivers in the hobby in particular, staying power is a big thing. You look at like AJ Green, DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones. When injuries start plaguing like towards the back half of a wide receiver's career, the hobby just really loses interest. And I think that's part of the reason Calvin Johnson is so collectible, because he kind of went out on top. He didn't stick around longer than he needed to. He had a pretty short career, and it just always felt like he was always good.
Yeah, it's not just about first impression; it's about last impression too.
Well, we got to close it with a bang here. So last week we talked about the AFC a lot from a collecting standpoint, and we closed the show with what we thought were some pretty bold predictions that heading into the season that we think will affect the hobby and collectors and how they look at certain players. We're going to talk NFC next week on the show, but while we have you here, we want to know your boldest prediction going into this season. It can be about a team, an individual player. What's front of mind right now for you?
Boldest prediction, Brandon Ayuk finishes top 5 in receiving yards this year. and really reminds people why he was taken in the first round.
Wow. That's a good one. Even with Trey
Yeah.
Lance's inconsistency issues, potentially.
Even because that's the thing is that even though Trey Lance is inconsistent, he's going to keep taking shots.
Yeah.
He's extremely aggressive. So even if he's only hitting 30% of his deep balls to Ayuk, well, guess what? He's still throwing a lot more of them than Jimmy was. So, 3 out of 9 is still better than 2 out of 10, for Jimmy. So he's still going to get more opportunities, more chances. And Jimmy, even though he was a lot more consistent in the short to intermediate game, he was even worse than Lance was as a deep ball passer. Mm-hmm. And at least Lance has the potential to get better at it. So I just think overall Lance is an upgraded quarterback, even though he will be maddeningly inconsistent and people need to be prepared for that. I think maybe he's a little bit overpriced right now. He's still a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo, and he's still more aggressive and will give Brandon Ayuk chances. And I truly do think that in terms of just pure receiving yards this year, Ayuk is going to outproduce Debo, even though Debo is going to supplement that with rushing yards. And I think that Ayuk has a legit shot to be a 1,400 yard receiver this year. He obliterated everyone in camp, and the Niners have a really good secondary. The hype there is real. Saw it for myself. He's a legit wide receiver one and somebody who I think most people just aren't really thinking about right now.
I actually pulled a very rare Brandon Ayuk card from 2020 Select, I don't know, a year and a half ago, whenever that product came out 2 years ago. And I got it graded, and I was like, I'm not a Brandon Ayuk guy, particularly Debo's the dude in San Francisco, and I sold it. And now hearing you say this is just proof that for some of these wide receivers and running back cards, if you get a big one, just hold on to it because you really never know how things are going to shake out.
I'm about to rush to go try to move up my fantasy drafts to before this episode goes live. Brett, we really can't thank you enough. Brett Kollmann, once again, from the Film Room. Find him on YouTube. Find him on Twitter, @Brett Kollmann. We will drop the links in the description below. Brett, thank you again. We'll have you on again during the season.
Love the insight,
Of
Brett.
course.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us once again. We will be back again next week with another episode of the PSA Pod.